So the talk will be around neuroarchitecture, psychology of spaces, and in general, designing for the mind. I'll say this clearly from the beginning, like my goal here is also in a way to build possible collaborations with professionals, with universities in the US, in Canada, in Central and South America who are interested in integrating neuroscience, sensory design, and psychology into architectural education. Because if your institution is exploring the future of human-centered design, I would definitely be interested to be part of that conversation. But so I think I was trying to minimize something. Okay, but so like why neuroarchitecture now? How does space shape us, for instance, and we often talk about the buildings we design. We talk much less about the bodies and mind that inhabit them. And really, to me, neuroscience has shown that our built environment influences our stress level, our hormonal cycles, our cognition, our emotional regulation, and even our social behaviors. And yet, most architectural education practices or institutions still really treats the body as, in a way, an afterthought, and the mind as something intangible. And this is where I really believe that neuroarchitecture gives us the tool to connect the two. So what's my path until now to this field? My path really in neuroarchitecture wasn't academic at first. It was experimental. And in a way also, I would say mostly accidental. I first moved to Lisbon kind of like 15 years ago because I'm originally Italian from Milan, and working there with professionals like Aris Mateus, which is a very prominent local studio there, but also absorbing about the culture and the relationship with sound, but also like with humble material and how to create something that is of emotional impact, but with scarce resources and budget, really taught me what I call emotional minimalism, architecture made of light and shadow. And I think a lot of you probably coming from different parts of America as a continent will also relate a lot to that. And then I moved to Copenhagen. So from a city with abundance of sun but little resources to a city that had a lot of resources but was lacking of sunlight for half of the year. And there I learned a lot by doing a master in urbanism and societal changes at the Royal Academy of Fine Art, but also working alongside Jan Gehl, that is kind of, I would say, like the father of contemporary urbanism. That experience has really shaped me and taught me what I call behavioral design. So the life that happens in between the building and the psychology of them, like how the psychology of how shaping cities in a certain way as opposed to another create also very different type of citizens with different values and different behaviors. And then I moved to Beijing. So I went from a city without sunlight to a city without clean air. And that taught me intensity. So sensory overload, speed, environmental stress, what it means to live constantly inside building without operable windows, with always like mechanical ventilation inside spaces, so never really fresh air. This blue light on top of you, I would say nearly 24/7. And so all these personal experiences then kind of like sunk in me during the pandemic. And I realized that everything I'd lived suddenly clicked into a single question, and the question for me was like, what do our spaces do to our bodies, and how can they help us heal instead of harm? And it became really the foundation of my research, of my practice at the BSc, and then my teaching that I will also touch on that. But so what's the methodology really that stems from my research into, and my hopefully my contribution, into these fields. So, well, at ABSC, we combine research, design, and teaching practice as different critical mediums in order to focus on designing spaces that heal, inspire, and transform at different degree, based, of course, on the program and the brief, through what I call the science of well-being. So, guided by principle of neuroscience and psychology of spaces, we really design environments that foster emotional resonance, personal growth, and holistic healing. From immersive installations to cultural spaces and wellness retreats, also like concept design for boutique hotels, residencies, and workspaces, our projects are really rooted in a deep understanding of how spatial qualities can restore a connection between body, mind, soul, and the environment we live in. But how do we do that? So we don't see architecture as something static. We see it as a design of conditions, let's say, conditions that influence the nervous system state. And so we have developed 6 strategies that really guide both our practice and also my teaching, which is how I, in a way, met Daniel. So first, for us, it's very clear to define emotional and behavioral well-being goals. So as part of the brief, we really begin by getting a deep understanding of the user's holistic needs, emotion, and behavior through workshop, interview, case study. And it goes as deep as really investigating, especially if we're working with a final user of the project, what are even like your what's your medical history? What are any health condition or issues that the person is battling, Then the second step is, of course, valorizing the context, uniqueness. So climate, culture, heritage. Because I don't believe that designing for well-being in mind, it means having one answer for all, one size that fits all. In fact, like contemporary medicine is now developing through the AI to start to customize even dosages of pills and medications, because they realize that there is something much more complex in a way to our biology than one formula fits all. I also indeed very much believe that spaces, have the power. We do have the power to create this very, very custom, tailor-made project or solutions, I would say, that really merge the psychology and the physiology of the user, combining it with the local climate, culture, and heritage and history of the site. Then, of course, we have of course, I mean, for me, it's of course, but then we have a very strong, which is step 3, a very strong integrative approach, where we really want to integrate all the senses, not as a form of overload and spectacle, especially when it comes to residential project, for example, because also every different projects require different things. But like when it comes, for example, a residential project, we have a very different approach than if it was for an immersive installation. But overall, going beyond what we see, right, and instead tackling what we can hear and smell and feel with our fingertip, and the temperature of the space, and the sense, even like the humidity, of the space. These are all aspects that are very important for us. Then we have a 4th step in the development of the project, which is really trying to innovate typologies. All of our projects are thought to be extremely adaptive and flexible, which I think are the 2 very core pillars that we should also push in our educational context. With layout that consider future scenarios and continuous customization, because if we want to speak about designing with sustainability in mind and make that kind of the entry point for any project, like taking sustainability as a kind of like a granted parameter that every project should satisfy, then thinking how to make our spaces adaptive and flexible, it's key. And we use principle of behavioral science here to clearly delineate spaces for circulation, rest, work, creativity, connection, and prefer the use of course, also like adjustable light, flexible or reconfigurable furniture that can really evolve with the user lifestyle. Then we have a step that we call prioritizing the essentials with clients, but sometimes also, with students, it really appears to be difficult, which is like kind of like kill your darling, kill your dolls, like a lot of time we have these dreams and vision of what we think our space, should look like or should feel like or what we think we need. But the truth is that our body and our mind might need way more or way differently than what society in a way tells us that we need, and then in turn we think that we need that. And this prioritize only the essential, in a way it's kind of like another workshop that we run with our clients, where we really want them to understand that we reached a point in society, I feel, where spaces became kind of containers of possessions, and instead, I think the approach we should have here is really decoupling from what society tells us we need, and then individually realize what my body need, what my mind need, what my soul need, and then instead invest in few items, but of very high quality them at that point, built in an ethical way with good material, long-lasting material, again, other sustainability principle, in order for them to grow with us and evolve with us. And then last, creating metrics for success. So it's also very important to evaluate the project success with measurable outcomes by collecting users' feedback, monitoring behavioral shifts, so on and so forth. And so overall, I would just summarize these 6 pillars saying that this is not really, what we do is not a design style. It's really like a framework, quite, I would say, a rational one for shaping human experience. And this is really like also the core content that I feel education in architecture should propose today. And well, why do we do this? Because we simply believe that the spaces we design today will shape the individuals and communities of tomorrow. And in an era of rapid urbanization, environmental uncertainty, relentless technological advancement, and I would say also increasing mental health challenges, the role of architecture should extend beyond aesthetics and functionality, and it really must provoke a renewed sense of belonging and actively support individuals' well-being. So looking ahead, we see our mission as a fundamental response to the challenges of our time. And again, I really believe that education should do that too, offering spaces that bridge ancient genetic needs in a way with future innovations, of course, while maintaining a profound connection to culture, site, tradition, heritage, and nature. So by prioritizing well-being at the core of our design practice, we aim to set a new paradigm for spatial design, one that is deeply restorative, intuitive as well, and attuned to the future of human experience. And I think that these are very tough theme to tackle within an educational space, how to teach to design with intuition, right? But the fact that it's hard, it should not prevent us from trying, right? So this is in a way where also like we stand and where we are curious to, to promote. And now I will speak a little bit about, just very briefly about the course that I've been teaching since 2021. It's called, as you probably understood from my initial slide, Neuro Architecture and Psychology of Spaces. I teach it on an online platform called Great Nova Global Campus. Is an educational space where they aim to propose courses that they believe universities should be teaching, but that because of credit recognitions or some bureaucratic reason, universities are not necessarily proposing yet. And for the time being, this is a module as part of a bigger, let's say, degree called Sustainable AI Architecture. And the course that I'm teaching, the neuroarchitecture one, it really consists of a structured curriculum that merges neuroscience, psychology, and design. The course is organized along 6 core pillars in order for students to learn not only what to design, but why bodies react the way they do. So there is a first part that has more to do with the foundations of neuroarchitecture. So there is an introduction to the whole concept of this marriage between neuroscience and architecture. Then we talk about the human body as an intelligent system to kind of like become, in a way, return to be aware of our superpowers that have been kind of like deemed down by supplementing our everyday life and actions and activity with technology more and more and more. And then we became so unaware of how biologically we were inherently built to, for instance, know to navigate a savanna without any wayfinding, just by oral design and landscape and feature, for instance. Then there is a point of like where we actually really actively bridge how the brain works and responds to spaces, and how can we design spaces that shape our behavior, or, for example, soothe us, make us feel calmer, especially in relation to concerns on mental health and the increase of chronic anxiety or conditions like depression and so on. Then there is a second part of this course, which has more to do with sensory perception and applied design. So here we speak a lot about environmental impact, and I bring along during every class several case studies, some more specific than others. The whole curricula is presented. Each class is actually broken down in one of the 5 senses, and then it goes beyond the 5 senses, because it's also so interesting to see how it is common knowledge, let's say, or common thinking that we do have exclusively 5 senses, but then when we go and see what neurologists think about how many senses we have, there is a massive debate and a massive literature on it, down to some scientists, declaring that we have up to 34, 56 senses. And, this course that I have the chance to teach right now has only 8 classes, 8 sessions. But if I had the chance, for instance, to present these, ideally also in a physical, like in presence, in a physical context with more classes, I would love to dig deeper into all these other senses that we forget we have, and see how can we design for this, like playing with these specific senses, right? To amplify our awareness of our ability as humans with our bodies and that relationship with spaces. And finally, exactly what I was just saying, so like it's a section about really like what it means designing for well-being. And also in a way touching on what does it mean then to build timeless architecture, which is a term that I like to use within the course more to refer to like this kind of very holistic type of architecture that is in tune with nature, is in tune with planet, is very sustainable. And so once again, it's like, for me, it's very, I don't want to decouple, but instead I want to show that an architecture that is good for the body and the mind is also an architecture that is extremely sustainable to the planet. And so these are also points that I think are very important to touch base on. And so through a different session, I'm really interested to show to students overall the invisible patterns, in a way, that our brains constantly scan, from symmetry, rhythm, textures, and even like legibility. And even when we don't consciously notice harmony, our nervous system does. And this is where architecture becomes really like a neurological language. Within the course, my aim is really also like to provide students with a toolkit that helps them identify the qualities of what I was defining a timeless type of architecture that can withstand the test of time and mark our era for the generations to come. And in doing so, we combine neuroscience with timeless architectural principles of like aesthetic harmony, proportion and scale, material integrity, spatial flow, emotional resonance, cultural awareness. That there is just so much that uh, there are so many themes that we could actually use and extract and um, use them kind of as different glasses to see, analyze even the student's proposal, like filters, like I think that a good architecture, an architecture that is good to the body is also an architecture that is multi-layered. So how can we communicate, pass down these layers, and tell them there's different ways to read and produce architecture. And so these qualities really appear again and again in spaces that people describe as healing, calming, or inspiring. And so the alignment between psychology and design history, for instance, is not accidental. It's chemical, it's hormonal, it's kind of like electric by nature. And so I'm very interested to train the next generation of future architect and designer to be able to decode this human sensory input, so um, even like associating acoustics with cortisol levels, textures with grounding, light with circadian rhythm, of course, color with emotional activation, spatial scale with safety or overwhelm. So within this framework, then architecture becomes really a form of nervous system design. Because you see, like beauty is not decorative. This is what I learned by studying neuroscience. It's really a biological need. Like scientific studies show that harmonious environments activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that is that part of our nervous system responsible for relaxation, restoration, healing, and emotional stability too. And within ABSC and within our think tank, we really explore how beauty affects immunity, how spatial harmony reduces stress, how design can support mental health, how cities can become emotionally resilient. And this is where we bridge scientific research with public discourse. So I actually 5 years ago I had started this little page on Instagram called The Beauty Equation. Then because we got very busy with the office, then I actually paused it, and now I have started a couple of months ago to return, or a month ago, I started to return to share content, but not on Instagram, not on this page, but on my personal page. And this is also very interesting because I am not, I'm 34 years old. I could say that Instagram is one of the platforms that it was given to my generation, right? But maybe I'm a bit of an old school person. I'm not so technology versed, yet I really realized how important it is to use the tool we have at hand to raise awareness, to spread even just curiosity, drop a little seed. And so I find myself in the end, coming back and using, for example, these platforms as a way to educate and even make, some of the research findings that come from my research public in a way. Because really, like this idea, also, I had the chance to publish them internationally, but more importantly, they have sparked debate in some academia context, or for sure in the industry and policy. And this field is, as at the beginning someone was mentioning earlier, is really hungry for structure and clarity, and I would also say new pedagogy. And when I show our project from a BSc to students, also like I don't show them as objects or like beautiful or non-beautiful images. I show them as experiments really in neuro architecture, and what we do at the office is in a way is all it's all an experience. Immersive experiences, which has become like an installation, which has become one of the format that I like the most in a way to test. Can anyone hear me? Because it says your internet is unstable.
Oh yeah, it is. Well, we lost you for a minute, but you returned.
I returned. Okay. Do you mind to let me know where I stopped?
Oh, I think the previous slide where you had all the
Okay.
projects.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I was just saying that when I also show our project to students, I don't show them as finished product or, object or something just to stare at, like we have become more accustomed, let's say, to treat architecture also because of these, provision everywhere, of social media and images, and now with AI, so much image production. But I really show them as experiments in neuro architecture. And so now I would like to show here very briefly um, three case studies that we developed at the office, which is the scale of the immersive experience. Because the design of these rooms has been already another tool for me during different design week, Milan Design Week, Dubai Design Week, so on and so forth. Hopefully, we're gonna do something next year in New York. Let's see, finger crossed. They all, they really become vessels through which, without explaining anything, visitor just by passing a threshold and being put in a room with very specific qualities, they just get it. They just start to feel a very, like a very strong emotion, a very strong response. And this is what, we are particularly interested in, to let people feel what we say. So I know to be researched. So in this case, the installation is called Back to the Future. And here we were really playing with the theme of like sensory hypnosis through colors and rhythm, thanks to the use of room dark in order for people to kind of calm and attune their nervous system coming from the city outside Milan, full of stimuli and stuff going on during design week, for then surpassing this curtain and then being exposed to like this space that have very specific sound, a very specific scent, and there was also like a dancer in on our social, maybe later at the end if you're interested I can even show you the video. There was also a dancer performing in certain moments of the day, and people would just like automatically silence. This is also very interesting. When people get into these kind of rooms, and we don't tell them anything, there is not like a code of behavior. They just start to like as if they're entering a church, even if it looks nothing like a church and is not meant to be a temple or a religious space. But it's like they're like this kind of reset rooms, like they are imaginary and fantastic and playful, but yet very loaded of emotions. Then I'm gonna show you another installations we did in Dubai. Here we called it Carved in the Now, simply because the whole walls were made of like a series of very rare type of stones from Italy, and then we also embedded the crystals and golden leaf. It was something, like very specific, let's say. And here we were very interested in using silence and materiality to shift, to see how that would shift breathing patterns. So even in this case, people would enter the tent of downtown design. If any one of you is familiar with the fair that happens every year in November in Dubai, and we kind of revamped to cover the reception area. Usually there is a big echo and sound problem here because everyone is like queuing to get their ticket at the desk. So first thing, we decided to clad with the foam padding that is used for recording studios, all the walls and surfaces, and even like the reception tables, to give it on one side kind of a geometric, like an aesthetic look. But what was more important is that by using such an affordable and easy material, we could increase massively the quality, the sound quality of the space. And then once past again the curtain, like here, you would find yourself in this room that had a path with mirror above and the top. So again, we're also playing a lot with suspensions. We're playing with rhythm. We're playing with reflections. We're playing with light. Um, of course, there's always a lot of craftsmanship involved. We're playing with playfulness. For us, it's also very important to bring back, even in adults, this sense of wanting to play again. And so here are just some images. And then we have last case study that I want to talk to you today. Another pavilion we designed for another design week. This was commissioned by the car manufacturing company, BMW, because they really love the idea of associating their product with such a mission, which is like, how can we utilize material, texture, and spaces, architecture in general, as tools for calming and soothing the nervous system. It's something that they are themselves in-house trying to explore with the interiors of their cars, and so they love this idea of like creating this partnership. And and here for us, the challenge was regulating the emotional arc through spatial compression. So from the outside, you could see this very playful 8-meter cube in a very deep sapphire blue color with nylon fabric. Then I will also get back to the modularity. Then once someone enters into the cube, they could like walk up a ramp, and they would find themselves in between this very kind of complementary color to increase even more, in a way, the excitement. So we were in between the blue and the orange, which in Dubai are also very particular and kind of a symbolic colors, because at night, with the sunset, the sky tends to become one part very blue, and then it's just so orange, like the sun at sunset is like extremely orange. So we really also wanted to evoke the Emirati sunsets in a way. And while walking through these pathways, of course, someone was like, the visitors would be surrounded by these grids. So we had no mirror here, but we were trying to amplify this kind of kaleidoscopic effect of rhythm by introducing a grid, which of course is not just a visual and aesthetic thing, but was mainly structural. The whole installation was assembled without without a glue. Everything was with joinery and then just a few screws, because the idea is that the installation was assembled off-site, disassembled, reassembled, and reused again. So it is very important for us to talk about modularity and sustainability and adaptability and so on. And then once walking through the pathways, we created these pipe holes. And the idea of the pipe hole, what happens in the brain, and this was really like staged from my research in neuroscience, is that the pattern that leads to pleasure, so to stimulating the parasympathetic system, is made of 3 steps, which is anticipation, that was this phase in a way, this playful phase. Then curiosity, which is what we were kind of stimulating with these pipe holes, down to pleasure. So the arrival inside the main room, which was kind of unexpected because people didn't know it was really a meditation tent, the place that they would be leading to. But once someone would be arriving inside the room, so they would be, asked to remove their shoes. The floor had this dune-like padding made of Alcantara. Walls were in cream silk. This lighting fixture that would create a very rhythmic structure. Also like playing, between the hollowness of the pupil and the light and stick. We're also playing a little bit with the one and the zero of the binary system, kind of giving you no choice, black or white, one or zero, which is also very important for the amygdala, which is that part of our brain that, when exposed to too much solicitation, would start to fire, um, in a way, danger, which, even if it's not like being in the savannah with a lion, but it would still create, in some people could create anxiety. In general, it could create, overstimulation, overwhelmment. Well, if we give a grid, a structure, and a sense of repetition, once the brain has perceived, okay, this is how here it works, this is the structure, and then when it sees it repeated, then it gives a sense of safety, of protection. And this is what happens. So people would just remove their shoes without explaining them it was a meditation tent or so on. They would just sit down, lay down. At the center there was a very specific scent, was rose water. We had a very specific sound frequency. And then they would just like lounge looking at the sky in this very unexpected space. And this project was just presented also in a symposium in Lisbon at the Champalimau Foundation, which is a foundation specialized in neuroscience and studying um, the brain, like brain connection with several like disease or mental health conditions, and they found it extremely exciting as well, how to bring that and connect that with spaces. And so all these type of in a way, like each of these projects really for us becomes a lab, and this is what I really want to communicate, and this is what I would love to do also with students, like using projects as a lab for studying how humans respond to spaces. And this is also the type of teaching material and case study that students are getting excited about, I feel, these days, like they really want to see projects that make them dream, perhaps, still have hope that there will be space for them in the industry, that the industry is not in the hands of AI in a way only. And I have to say, and so far our efforts haven't gone unnoticed, so when it comes to press and, like awards by institution. So I would just, like I want to close with three questions for you. That I believe, or for us all, that I believe academic institutions are uniquely positioned to explore. The first one is, what would design education look like if we taught the body as rigorously as we teach form? The second is, what if spatial design became part of preventative healthcare? And how can we, as educators, be actors, in these active actors, in this scenario, play a role in this? And how can we train the next generation of architects to design for emotional resilience? In a world with more and more mental health crises, how can we do that? How can we use our tools as preventative form of medicine in a way? And these really are, like the question that for me are shaping what could be potentially the next decade of architecture and of design. And they require new pedagogies, new collaboration, new research, because the world doesn't need other designers really, but I think that the world needs designers with an intention. Whatever we build, it can be an installation, an object, a room, a performance. I believe in making things with a purpose, building them with a belief, letting our talents, our gifts emerge and place them at the service of others. I think this is when work stops being just design, the next trend, and really becomes impact. And this is really my very personal approach to teaching, and this is what I am very interested in attracting. So I want to say now I would love to have a conversation if we have time and if any of you is like feels compelled to share or to ask questions, So thank you for listening. And as I wrote here, there's like my contact, office Instagram, my email, my personal Instagram for having sneak peek on the research I share. And overall, I really would love to stay connected. And if your university, if your institution is exploring neuroscience, cognitive science, well-being, or sensory design, I would love to collaborate. Through it can be guest lecturing or joint research, think tank partnership, and of course, semester courses. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ariana. Now, I don't know if someone wants to talk about or try to give their input or discuss on the several questions you asked. First, I think this is a great opportunity for Cafe Connect and for ITech to meet someone like you. I was one of the students of one of those courses in Grid Nova, and that's how I met Ariana. And I think, and not like to be very, like to get, to create this whole allegoric thing, but I think you are a talent that one would say in a couple of years, maybe half a decade, would be say, okay, it's like being like in the 70s meeting Rem Koolhaas or someone like that. That is someone who is going to have an impact. And
okay.
So I think I consider myself lucky to be able to connect with you because we think alike and we think about the importance of space. And I've been telling this, I'm an architect myself as you, and I started to go down the path of interior design because as you mentioned, design, as I tell my students, design is not necessarily something that it is required. It's something that is that we want, that we pursue, because we pursue beauty by nature. We want to be near things we consider beautiful, and the discussion of what is beautiful is an aesthetic discussion, a philosophical discussion. But beauty is essential to what we for our well-being. And as I also tell my students, I tell everyone, I think that interior design and the scale or where humans inhabit is the future of architecture, because it is becoming increasingly difficult to make new buildings. And I don't know anyone who experienced a building by looking at a facade hanging over 50 meters above the ground. That doesn't happen. We live in these spaces and we are affected by these spaces. So, and the way that we are trying to readapt our cities, our buildings, to reuse our buildings, all that is going to be a constant for future generations of architects, interior designers, engineers, everyone, because, well, resource-wise, it is not as affordable as it used to be to create new structures, but to, refurbish them to what we need. And if we can do it in the pursuit of beauty, well, that is going to stimulate our amygdala way more than any other thing that we can possibly have, and that AI cannot do. At least for now. I don't know, but I don't think it will get there. So with that being said, I want to entice other participants of Cafe Connect to ask you questions or to give out their input. So I leave the floor to the audience.
I have a quick question. I'm from the Dallas area. Have you experienced the older generation not willing to entertain this new concept of, I'm going to call, what do you call, neuro architecture, whole design? because when I allow the students to select their own theme, they naturally kind of flow because of their own issues or their own concerns, their own dealings with mental health. They enter that space naturally. So, have you experienced any type of pushback from what the existing architects would
I,
say?
I
No,
love
no, you got to learn the foundations.
I love this question. Thank you so much because in a way it shows in a way, it positions even more the matter at its core, which is that design doesn't really or design conversation doesn't really exist in a vacuum, but it's just so connected, even, like with generational mindset or upbringing or cultural, like how each generation was raised. And the way I want to reply to this, which is yes, there is resistance, is because I would reply like that by connecting it with the way a younger generation sees healthcare these days, and the way a more senior generation sees healthcare. Like, I grew up with parents that would be teaching me that for every pain there is a pill. Okay. Now we're not. I'm not here trying to make kind of like a war of some sort against the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not saying let's stop to take medicine, but I think that now, especially in the US, there is a massive new generation of doctors that are not that young either. They are quite experienced professionals that have been debunking, this whole industry, but realizing that there is a part of this industry that has really been benefiting on unhealthy, like basically sick people, as opposed to helping them, and is exactly this mindset that then has been slowly is helping the older generation to see, okay, maybe there are other ways, alternative ways to take care of us, preventative ways to taking care of us, and then our health doesn't happen in vacuum, and we should not push ourselves to wait until the point of needing a pill, in order to understand that our self-care is important. So I think that this architecture and kind of self-care, spatial self-care, let's say, is part of a way bigger conversation that really ties very well with, for instance, medicine, and health, of course, the healthcare system in general. And so it's a matter of, slowly pushing the needle, with conversations like this one, and making sure that in the right conferences, in the right panel talks, on the right publications, there's more and more people that, from their perspective and lens, of their specialty, they have the chance to show that there are more holistic ways of taking care of ourselves, which doesn't mean that the pill is bad, but that maybe we should start to work before reaching the point of being in need of, for example, a pill. And space is one of them, like being extremely aware of the spaces we put ourselves in, and how, for example, we create our homes where we spend 75% of our lifetime. These are like, did I reply to your question?
Yeah, I think you did. It's about, like you said, having the right panel, having the right discussion, having the audience and the um, yeah, having the audience to have the discussion of what it looks like to change the curriculum, to change how it's being pushed forward, how it's moving. When, like I would say, if I give the students the opportunity to change if in the environment that we're sitting in the studio lab that we're studying in, how would they change the environment without any more direction? What comes back is this natural progression of wholeness and wellness and health from just being going through. I mean, we're looking at students who've gone through 9/11. We're looking at students who, in Texas, we were taught to how to respond if there was a tornado warning. Now they're taught how to respond if there is an active situation going on in the building. All of those different wellnesses and, just the term anxiety now means something different than it did 20 years ago. Their designs are responding to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about this conversation is that, and the fact that it's important to start it early, is that rather than being reactive, like saying, okay, there is a tornado, so now let's think about solutions for, like emergencies like a tornado. Like we already know that with more and more AI involved, we already know now, we have data enough to know that the mental crisis can only increase, and this is not to be to be pessimistic, but it's just to, it's just to say like, okay, we already know where the curve is pointing. So rather than being reactive and, always coming up with solution when we have already the problem very big, why not, rather than starting here, why don't we start at this point of the curve? And so that maybe, maybe I'm not saying that it's gonna flatten, but maybe, someone will, can be spared.
Yes, yes, that is absolutely true. And I don't know if there's any other question, because I think that the whole point, or the most important point of human-centered design and thinking, or like thinking about a course that uses or leverages human-centered design, or a curriculum or a program, is whether or not to come up with solutions. The first thing is how to address the main problem. It has to reframe the main problem. As you mentioned, the students may come to add to the discussion. Students may come, and I had this when my students say, "Okay, I'm going to do a project," and they're constantly debating their anxiety, their feelings, and everything is becoming very biographical, like in project-wise. And this tells us something, and is that they are more empathetic and more willing to share those feelings. Older generations, well, my dad has never admitted to being anxious about anything. And, well, he's 76 years old. He must have been stressed in his life. He must have been anxious at some point. He must have had financial worries, existential worries that he never shared with us. Whereas my sister and I, we're more open towards this. And if I see my godson and I see other children, or even my students, they'll practically come up once a week to me and say, "This is wrong. I have anxiety. I have this and that." So I think we're dealing with a population that is much in touch. I don't know if conscious or be able to act on it, but they are more conscious about it, and they don't have the social the restrictions to openly discuss it. And I think that is healthy. Maybe sometimes it could be perceived as inconvenient, but I think it is a rich set of data that we have to work with, that we're probably discovering. So, well, I think the proposal is to mine it, instead of saying that is something that is secondary. It is part of the embedded culture. It's part of the embedded society, and, well, it is the humans that we have right now. But yeah, I am lingering. So I don't know if someone else has a question, or someone has a reflection.
I just want to say, I just want to say it was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed what you had to say and how you went about doing it, and I think it really, was able to connect to whatever you were speaking about. I do research on spatial theory, and I saw a lot of the connection part, especially when you're speaking about the human senses and there being more than just thoughts. I sort of propose things like, sensory perception, something like haptic sensations and those types of things, which add more to the senses. There's more to our senses than we actually know about. And being able to be in touch with them, being able to understand them. It's really interesting because the mind doesn't get any information unless it goes through the senses, right? And being able to understand that process, right? And I thought it was really exciting to hear you talk, touch on some of those things. Being able to put it in terms that people can understand, because sometimes it can get very philosophical, right? And it's hard to grasp the nature, but being able to bring it down to something and showing us the images of those spaces were fantastic, right?
Thanks.
And I was looking at them when I first saw them. I thought, wow, that space is huge. But then, as you see, you mirrored it, and it took me a moment to catch the mirror and the expanse, and being able to, that repetition, that sort of thing is, foundational courses, foundational concepts that, really, the idea of, something repeating makes us feel safe. I really appreciate that part. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Means a lot.
Well, we're coming up to we're over a minute, over 9. I think this is the last chance to ask something. I think someone.
Hi.
Yes, Palma.
Yeah, it's a nice presentation so far, and it's timely, so I enjoyed a lot. I think everyone enjoyed a lot. I have a quick question. Not question, it's a discussion. Do you have any biometric data, like true measurement, scientific measurement of the stress on the trauma? By profession, I'm an architect, licensed architect, and I work on the trauma, stress, and the design, trauma-informed design. So I'm really curious. Do you have any practice or study on how the architecture, the principles of architectures can impact on the stress, trauma?
So that's a very good point. In fact, it was one of the pillar, right? Like metric of success. So because I mean this we are also learning by doing. Okay, and so we have realized with our installation, the third one I showed you in Dubai, how important it will be next step for us to do quantitative measures, because up until now we've been doing qualitative measure, which in any case within even a scientific context, part of the way metrics are being collected is through qualitative data. There's usually a questionnaire, where people have to, after a certain being exposed to a certain experience, they will have to, mark down, good, bad, high, middle, whatever, So we have qualitative data. We don't have quantitative data, which could be as simple as having to measure heart rate, skin conductivity. Like it's just very basic measurable information. This will be our next step, like our next installation. We already know that that will be a non-negotiable, because sometimes there's also like budget concerns, but we said to ourselves that like this is a must, like less money in material, whatever that is, but that needs to be taken into account. There are, however, there is a lot, especially when it comes to trauma-informed design. There is already quite a literature, that of data that informs about very specific experiences. They might not necessarily be so artistic, as the one that we are trying, like, or so evocative as the one that we are trying to do, and they're more like they're designed by scientists fundamentally, but they're more like room in vacuum, you know what I mean? But there is something. So if you'd want to, like to contact me, then I would love to, exchange notes in a way, and yeah, and keep the conversation going on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone that is being so would it be to have, yeah, so my email is abacrts.com. So I wrote my email in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I was also putting some information in the chat regarding Salma's question. There's an architect neuroscientist called Ana Monbiedro. I think she's quite famous. She works with measuring these things because she's more into the biological aspect of neuroarchitecture. So maybe she could have some kind of input.
Would you mind? Okay. Would you mind to share the email address so that I can connect?
For Ana Monbiedro? No, I don't know Ana Monbiedro, but she has YouTube videos, TED Talks, and she has she has published work. I hope I would have her number, but I don't. So I know someone who has, but and maybe I can hopefully get her, but I don't know, she's difficult to get. But you can look at her research.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any more questions because we're 5 minutes over time. This recording will be posted in the ideas. I will put it right here. Ideas for Interior Design website, which is ideasforid.com. Where we are putting all these content generated in the Cafe Connect space, and we're gathering it there just as a hub. And from where we drive, we collect this, and then we write some blog posts and create with AI. We create a podcast and different types of content, so it's more digestible. Because I guess that watching three sessions of about an hour, could take some time. So either way, all the things are in our YouTube channel as well, and you can find them in this website. So so thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much, Ariana. I'm glad you are in the U.S. I hope your plans of being based here come true, so we can hopefully have you in a conference and maybe convince you to become an IDEC member at some point, so you can present your wonderful work.
No need to convince. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone that made the time to dial in this morning.
Okay.
And hopefully I'll hear back also from some of you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Daniel. Bye-bye.